Welcome to the Never-Ending Backlog Podcast, your place for short reviews from a gamer with the goal of reducing his backlog. From adventures to sandboxes, join our host as we walk through a collection of unplayed treasures. Now, let's take a look at the featured game of this episode of the Never-Ending Backlog.
Hello everybody, welcome to the next episode of the Never-Ending Backlog Podcast. I'm your host, Zach, and today we'll be reviewing Take On Helicopters. You know, a Steam reviewer said it best. You get to fly a helicopter around Seattle, and what's better than that? Then, of course, that reviewer said they crashed their helicopter into their house, so I guess we probably should take that review with a grain of salt. Basically, Take On Helicopters is a helicopter piloting simulator by Bohemia Interactive. Bohemia Interactive is the group that has brought the Arma series, which gave us the DayZ mod, which then gave us the game H1Z1, which actually used to be one of my favorite games. You know, near the initial start of it, pre-PUBG Warzone style. I mean, the original H1Z1 game, and I'm not trying to get too far off a tangent, but that's what this podcast is for. The original H1Z1 was amazing. You know, I never got big into the DayZ mod because it was very realistic. I didn't like Arma as much. I own all the Armas. They'll be on Never-Ending Backlog, without a doubt, coming up probably sooner than later. But I never got into them as much. I'm not into super realistic games, you know, just not for me as much. H1Z1 was a phenomenal game. It was amazing for multiplayer because, I mean, you walk around this giant map that has zombies and animals, and you loot, and you repair vehicles, and you drive them around, and you hang out with friends, and you find new people, and I would say you find new friends, but that's not true. They're all trying to murder you. All the humans in the game are trying to murder you because these are actual human players. And, you know, and you're never worried about the bears or the coyotes or the zombies. They were no threat at all. You could kill them relatively easy. It was the people. The people would use voice covers, so you'd hear, like, Chucky and little creepy children saying, like, I see you. It was terrifying. Or they'd hide inside rooms and wait for you to come out, and they'd just murder you. It was terrifying. But you know what? Or you'd hear, like, the worst part of it. You know, you'd see somebody that, you know, you'd hear, like, a vehicle, and you just started, so you're like, oh, man, they already have a vehicle. That's terrifying. And then you hear, like, 6 vehicles, and you're just like, oh, this is even more terrifying. There's a whole battalion after me now, or going to find me, and they're going to murder me. So it's a cool game. It's a psychological game, or at least it was. I haven't played it in quite some time. I do remember there was a lot of problems with the game. Crafting was miserable. You know, you'd leave it when you enter the game, and someone would probably go there and destroy it, or they put a lock on it. It was weird. It's kind of that Fallout 76 problem that they had originally. Multiplayer spawning was hilarious at best for H1Z1. Like I said, this is not a review for H1Z1, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit because, like I said, it made a big impact in my life. But spawning, you would spawn on the map, and you'd have a map. You actually wouldn't have a map originally. You'd have to find a map, hopefully. And then when you found a map, you'd have coordinates. So it's like A through Z and 1 through whatever, 26, whatever, or 28. And then basically what you would do is you would land and you'd be like, oh, I'm by A5. Cool. Your friend would spawn the game, have to find a map. And then when they found it, they'd be like, oh, I'm by D10. Then it's up to you then to find a place to meet and try to get to each other before dying. There's very little co-op aspect to it. Likely one of you would die before you get to see each other, and then you'd restart the entire process again. It was funny. It was a fun game. Like I said, it was interesting. It added to that survival aspect. It was more realistic rather than, oh, I'm just joining a party, and we just spawned all by each other. It was great. So anyway, H1Z1 was great. But anyway, back to Take On Helicopters. You know, I haven't played many flight simulators in my past. So I'm probably not the ideal persona for this game. However, I have played quite a few games, so I can review it enough with that. You know, the game loaded relatively smoothly. However, it's a crazy large game. It's 15 gigabits. And I understand that games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare clocks in at about 100 gigs, which is insane. But 15 gigs is also still a large game, especially considering it's nearly a decade old. It was released in October 27th, 2011, as I mentioned, by Bohemia Interactive. Yeah, and it's quite large, you know? And no, Take on Helicopters is not a play on my favorite band, Aha's song Take on Me. Though if they had it play on repeat while I was flying around the helicopter, I probably would like it more because the game just has the sound of the helicopter rotors just spinning constantly, and that gets a little frustrating fast. But as mentioned, the game started fine. The graphics are what you'd expect from a 2011 flight simulator. The screenshots seem like they are much better than the actual gameplay graphics are by a mile. If you look at Take on Helicopter's Steam store, there's a screenshot in a city with a helicopter flying along a skyscrapers, and it shows a beautiful reflection. And I can honestly, I've not seen anything nearly that crisp in the game, and I'm pretty sure that's fake. I've flown near skyscrapers, especially around Seattle area. Graphics are cranked all the way to high because it's a 2011 game and the computer runs it pretty well. So it's kind of weird. The game is made and it did run at 5760 by 1080. Most simulators do, as I mentioned, in previous games. Controls are all right. I mean, let's be honest, helicopters are weird. They're an odd piece of machinery, any way you look at it. My father worked with helicopters many years ago, before I was born, and I have always had a fascination with them. However, they're truly odd designed items. Flying them in a game is always a chore. I remember playing Battlefield Bad Company 2, which was one of my favorite first-person shooters, and grabbing the chopper was nearly always a bad experience. I always butchered it, messed up my team, always felt really terrible about doing that. And, it happens, I guess. It's kind of a bummer. But, yeah, it's basically like flying them in this game, too. This is a simulator, so you expect it to be a little bit better. It's not really that much better. Because, like I said, there's not really a lot of controls to helicopters. I mean, I've seen the inside of helicopters before. I mean, I've been in helicopters when they're flying. They're a weird experience alone that side as well. But they're just weird. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of controls in helicopters. I'm not trying to underplay this. Like, it's like one switch and the keyboard perfectly reenacts. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying, compared to, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, a little bit different. It's a little bit different experience there. And helicopters shouldn't fly because they're just weird. But this game, like I said, controls are okay. Graphics are okay. I guess there are challenges you can complete. I tried the tutorial. That was fine. I mean, it went as good as I expected it to. It's relatively easy. You take off, you go down, you turn left, right, and you pivot forward to move forward, you pivot back to move backwards. There's really nothing crazy about that. It reminded me, there's a toy that I used to have. It was a base, and it had this pole that stuck off the base, and you had this little joystick that was built on the base, and you could fly the helicopter back and forth, and it was basically attached to it. And the helicopter was attached to this pole that had a little, propeller and stuff on it. And when you, pumped up or pushed the acceleration, the blade would spin and it'd actually fly. But it was attached to this base because that provided all the power and stuff like that. So it was like pre-radio control helicopter days. But they had like this little landing thing that you could actually like pick up boxes and stuff, and you could play like a little game and like drop boxes. So really cool vintage toy. This game reminded me of that. It has very similar challenges, like move stuff here and there, or pick up, people as like an Aeromed helicopter. It was cool. I'm not, like I said, I'm not big into those ones. I like having challenges rather than just free flight all the time, because free flight just gets boring, especially in a helicopter, because helicopters don't move as crazy fast as some other things do, like jets. So sometimes you're just like, I'm going to get to that destination surely soon enough. And it just takes a while sometimes. So overall, it was a fun game. I probably can't recommend this one because, like I said, it is 9 years old. It's way too large. I mean, over 15 gigs is insanity. There are much better simulators out there. I'm sure there are better helicopter simulators out there that run a little bit smoother, that have better controls, that are a little bit more responsive. And also ones that are far better looking, because it does look like I'm flying over a 1995 version of Google Maps. Like it's a flat terrain, and if you get really close, you'll be like, oh look, all these houses look like the Simpsons house, like on repeat. So, I'm probably not going to recommend this game, unfortunately. If you're into helicopter games, I bet you probably know already a better game. I played the old combat flight helicopter simulators many, many years ago, during the times of when like Delta Force was out, which is a really great PC first-person shooter game I used to play. those games were probably better, personally, in my opinion. And like I said, nothing against Bohemia Interactive. I just don't think this is their cup of tea. Arma seems more right up their alley. I did see a lot of reviews where they said that Arma has better helicopters than this game does. I'd probably believe that. I feel like probably what they did is they took the helicopters and the mechanics from that game, and then they just put it in their own game, and they probably didn't update that, but they kept on updating the Arma game, and that's likely what happened here. So, Take on Helicopters, not going to review it. Last I looked, I believe it was about $10. And yeah, I mean, unless you're a really big diehard helicopter fan, you probably can find better use of your time. Like I said, jump in Bad Company 2, let down your team, be just like me. All right. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Never Ending Backlog Podcast. I'm your host, Zach, and we'll talk next time.